Welcome back to Matches of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, with my co-host, Ben Bateman.
What's up, everybody? How you guys doing? We're here to talk to you about a very important issue tonight.
It's very important. Welcome to so we're a little bit back. This is the Matches of Modern podcast's mini episodes. We're releasing this on YouTube. We realized that just you guys all want some modern content, so we want to make it so it's making sure it's happening on a weekly basis. This is being made possible by our patrons, so please check out our patreon.com/themmcast. They are the reason we're able to make additional content. So if you check that out and help donate, you get access to early release episodes, all this extra content, and are making sure this happens. So thank you, patrons. We appreciate all of you a great deal for making sure this happens. And this, as I said, is the Masters of Modern. So we are going to be talking about modern only content today, and that is very specifically that just Uro needs to go away.
Uro needs to go away. I think it's been a minute since we focused really heavily on the sort of framework of the modern format, and then looking through it and discussing it a little bit. All the cards we're seeing played are cards we're very familiar with, but the one thing that we're seeing that is so consistent is a lot of colors and a lot of inevitability. We're seeing it in most of the top decks, and it doesn't really look like a whole lot of fun to be playing right now, I gotta say.
Well, so this is something that's really interesting. If you look at the top 5 decks of the metagame, 3 of them are Uro decks, and 2 of them are Luros decks. If you look at the top most played cards in Modern, Uro and Luros are the top 2 creatures played, followed by Skyclave Apparition. Now, the top 5 spells played are the normal, a red mana, a Lightning Bolt Path, Veil of Summer, Fatal Push, Aether Gust now, which is just like the world we live in. But the fact that just Luros is now at 17% and Uro is at 22% is kind of just like cemented that these 2 cards have created such powerful value engines in the format that it's honestly pretty problematic. Obviously, we're living in a world where everyone's in COVID, so actual tabletop metagame Pro Tour level Modern hasn't been seeing play, but just like on Moto, these 2 cards have warped the format so drastically that it's definitely interesting what's happening. I think some of it is Uro, right? Like Luros isn't seeing more play than Skyclave Apparition. The decks that are seeing play, like Rakdos, Death Shadow, and Hammer Time, which I love, is that deck exists, I think are actually kind of cool to be doing as well as they are. But on the flip side, just having like 3 different Uro piles, one playing Omnath, one Sultime, one Teamer, seems just like as this net negative on the format. And it's interesting how both of these cards are just like very similarly value engines, right? They're guaranteed. Uro is going to draw you, stabilize you, and then eventually give you a threat, while Luros is going to make it so you're guaranteed to have a Luros in play at least once a game. So yeah, I like it. It was interesting. We originally were going to do this little 10 minutes of Modern situation with the plan on going over the metagame, talking about the top played cards in the format, what kind of like a little bit of a deck tech, and then when we looked at it, we're like, oh, this format's unhealthy right now. So news alert: Uro is strong, surprising no one.
Yeah, I think the thing that's so interesting about this is, look, when you talk about powerful formats, they aren't healthy that often. Unfortunately, once you get to a certain level with your card pool and the power of what people are able to do consistently, it's harder and harder to have balance. But the thing that has made it especially difficult over the last few years is the general power level of multicolor cards has started to get pushed, and it's pushed in this one very particular way. It's cards that do more than one thing. It's cards that do more than one thing that have just a lot of consistency. And what it means is, if you're going to, play that in Standard, sure, I mean, Uro's a really good card, and that was very powerful in Standard. But when the cards you're supporting a card like Uro with are at the power level of Fatal Push, of Lightning Bolt, it's at the power of Thoughtseize, it's at the power of all of these things strung together, your mana base is perfect. It means that kind of everything you're drawing is going to be good. And it basically means that unless your opponent has a really clever way, like just the best possible way to get around your inevitability, which is why Hammer Time is a popular deck and why all of the decks outside of the top 5, or most of them anyway, are like Blitz or Burn or sort of aggro or combo, because they can go a little faster or go a little bit more infinite than your value engine. It just basically means that it's those cards, those engine cards you're talking about that extend the game, that mean you can pull back from your 4 or your 6 or your 8 life, get back in the game, and then what your opponent's drawing is just not going to be as good as what you're drawing, unless you are playing those cards, unfortunately.
Right, and I think some of it is also the two decks that are able to compete with the Uro decks at this level at the moment, or even if you go down to like the top 10 decks, right, where you start adding Amulet Titan, Burr and Heliot Company, Rakdos Midrange, and Blitz, is their ability to outvalue or go over the top of an Uro. But even then, it feels like they're like, in many ways, you should just be playing an Uro deck or one of these other two decks, or taking advantage of obviously the powerful companion mechanic, or Infect, right? Even if you look at the last league, Talisker won a 5-0 playing Infect, right? I think actually Infect's probably a good deck against Uro, because then the life gain doesn't matter. You're playing flyers that go over them, and you kill them on turn 4 while they're playing growth spirals and Uros. So there is ways to kind of get around this problem. But on the other hand, like, you don't have 3 of the 5 best decks in the format, and of that, 22% of the format, a fourth of the format, be just playing 4 of a card if that format is healthy, or that card is a healthy addition outside of like utility cards, right? When it's Thoughtseize or Path or Lightning Bolt that's doing that, that's different than like engines like Uro. And part of the reason that is the play pattern, right? Like, Lightning Bolt doesn't dictate my play pattern. It lets me do things. It lets me stop you from doing things, but it's not the gameplay that you're playing against every time that Lightning Bolt affects. Uro's play pattern is the same, so it starts making the format feel much more samey and much more monotonous. And like, the difference between Temur, Sultai, and Uro Omnath is significantly smaller than the difference between 17 different Lightning Bolt decks.
Yeah, it's not so different really in a lot of ways than the Snowblade decks that we were seeing prior to the banning of Astrolabe.
Sure.
The way that there was 4 variations of a very, very similar deck that were playing like 3 to 4 colors. Every deck's play pattern was very, very similar. You didn't really have to worry about what your mana base was going to look like. The value of all the cards and the sequencing was very, very similar. I think the other thing too is, like, another card that comes to mind, printed in the last couple of years, that has a similar kind of oppressive feeling, which is another card in the top deck, is Teferi Time Raveler. And Time Raveler is a little different in the sense that it doesn't generate the, you get one good pop of it to start with, and then it's a while before you get much more advantage. Them and your interaction with them based off of it exists, but you don't get to draw a card every turn off of it. But even so, it's the idea that you're playing this 3-drop. Its ability to stop your opponent from playing a spell at instant speed is already very good. You're going to draw a card and probably bounce something. So you're getting so much extra. You're getting that card, but you're also getting so much extra. With Uro, right? You play the card. You're going to get you're going to gain the life, draw the card, put the land into play, hits the graveyard. Doesn't matter. Your 3 mana got you more than enough. Now, later in the game, you're going to have this unstoppable threat, this huge, enormous thing that just is this unkillable machine. You look at the Lurrus decks. So many of the Lurrus decks in Modern are playing Bauble. So you're going to play a card that isn't in your hand anyway. It's just an extra card, and you're going to get it. You're going to play it. You're going to draw a card off of your extra card. And if your opponent doesn't do something immediately to break up what you're doing, they just won't catch up. There's like an extra bell or whistle that goes along with all these 3-drops that I think is just very different than the way Magic cards used to get designed. They just didn't used to be this way.
And I guess I come on 2 sides of that. Like, the reason I think Uro is significantly more problematic than those 2 cards. And I'm not saying, like, in the long run, we could be sitting in here talking about how Lurrus also needs to be banned. I don't think I can defend Lurrus very, very thoroughly. And Teferi Time Raveler is going to be a card that he internally think should just be banned from a fun person. It's like kind of like the new Blood Moon, right? Like, it's unfun. This card sucks that it exists and to play against, but it's never going to be so powerful that, like, it gets got, right? Like, the best case scenario is like enough weird blue-white cards get printed that blue-white control is the best deck for long enough that he's just a card that's so good that people get rid of alongside whatever other powerful card is printed for blue-white. But the thing that Omnath to me is more problematic than those other cards is its win condition status. The fact that this is also
not Omnath.
Sorry. The problem with Uro is that it's win condition status, right? It's like the game revolves around this card and it's going to kill me. Versus Lurrus doesn't really kill you. It can, right? It's a 3/3. It's a 3/2 attacking creature with lifelink. It can kill you, but it's not like the resolution of this card is an inevitability engine that every game ends the same. Versus Uro, every game ends the same. This is going to come into play, and it's going to come back, and it's going to be in your face, and you're going to have to deal with it. Luros, if I lightning bolt, it's gone, right? I can answer a Luros. I can answer a Teferi Time Raveler, and once again, Teferi Time Raveler can't kill you. Whatever that card can do won't murder you. It protects what they're doing that will murder you, but it's never going to be like, oh, I'm losing to this card again.
Well, another thing too is on its core level, like let's just talk through the rate that you get. Take away the win condition side for a second of Uro, right?
Right.
So you've got blue, green, 1 to gain 3 life, draw a card, and put a land from your hand into play, correct? That's what happens when you cast it or when you attack with it. 3 life, land in play, draw a card?
Yeah.
Okay. Green, blue,
draw a card,
1,
put a land in the play, but sure.
But you get all 3 effects.
Yeah.
Okay. Blue, green, 1, sorcery that does exactly that is not strong enough for the modern format. But how not strong for the modern format is that card, is my question. Because if you compare this to other value 3-drops that we've had over the years that have been really impactful, like let's just take the card Kitchen Finks for a second. Compare Kitchen Finks as a card to the sorcery I just mentioned. I think Finks is better, but by how much? 5%?
Well, but
10%?
Kitchen Finks, significant amount of the play that Kitchen Finks has seen in the format is its infinite combo capabilities. It's a great card when it also lets you gain infinite life. It's a medium card when you're just playing it as like a sideboard card, or like in the early days of Jund when like people were just playing it as a threat. Like it's not good enough for modern if the only thing you're doing with it is like random hate card against burn or like a weird threat. I think that
Sure.
I mean but like to answer your question, Growth Spiral is one of the most played cards in the format. I mean, it's not in the top 10, but it's like definitely top 30. And Growth Spiral is the card you said for 1 mana less, but no life gain. So I don't know. I do think like I agree with you that I think the back end of that card, I think the card you described is better than Kitchen Finks. I think the version that we're getting is obviously it's like better than Primeval Titan, I think. I think the card that we're currently dealing with is better than Prime Time. A card that should probably one day like is responsible for a lot of cards being on the ban list due to its actions.
Another thing, by the way, that's so weird about Uro, and I think is such a like misnomer when you think about the way these cards normally work. Uro, if you play it on the front half, its enter the battlefield ability is what puts it into the graveyard. So if you have anything that stops an ETB, like people don't really play Torpor Orb these days, but there's enough creatures that have the Torpor Orb effect. It doesn't. It's not actually good for you. They're getting a 6/6 for 3. So it doesn't actually help you. You basically the only way to make sure that this card doesn't screw you is you have to get it out of their hand before they play it, or they have to. There's not a lot of good ways.
Well,
they're going to get their value.
That's one of the reasons that the Temur Uro decks are playing a Sundial of the Infinite, right?
Yeah.
Like you get to on turn 2 Sundial, turn 3 Uro. Put a land into play, draw a card, gain life, leave the sacrifice trigger on the stack, use the land you put into play, which came into play untapped, to activate Sundial to then make it so Uro stays in play, right? Like that's awesome. I'm a fan of Sundial of the Infinite being good, but it also, I just think like, yeah, I agree that Uro is just an unhealthy. Like there's so many ways to make it better and break it even further, but I think just like on its face, if all it did was what it does, it's problematic, and it's problematic everywhere. Like we're gonna throw, if you check out, this is obviously a thing we're releasing at YouTube, but we do the podcast every week. Next week we're going to be talking about Historic, and if you want to look at what that metagame looks like or what the format looks like, and one of the big conversations about Historic is like Uro should probably also be banned there. This is a card that like it's not Oko, but it's not far off. And honestly, let's talk. If you wanted to talk about legacy, Oko also needs to just go away in every format. So I don't know. Well, I think like we've now gotten a year of Uro in Modern, and I think over that year, other crazy things have happened to allow Uro to go longer than I would have expected it to. But I think we're getting to the point where it needs to go.
So my question to you before we get out of here is, looking at the value of the card Uro and like the way it's designed, what do you think is the lesson to be learned in card design that's going to keep Magic fun and healthy and awesome, that like learns something from this experience and to some degree from Oko, because they're different cards, but they feel very similar in a lot of ways.
I think that Escape was a mistake. Is the card on this that I would point at? I think the problem with Loros is probably that Companion was a mistake, and I guess with both of them, it's the like guarantee, right? Like Escape, you're eventually going to get the escape to happen. The fact that it doesn't exile like Flashback does, I think leads to net negative gameplay. It's the same with the red enchantment, right? Like I don't think that card is good for Magic, and I don't think. And Companion functions similarly. It's just like I would also say just like stop adding draw card to blue and green effects.
What do you think? What do you think if Uro had said instead of draw a card and put a land into play, it was either draw a card or put a land into play. You get one or the other when it happens.
It would be better for Magic. Is that card still very good? Yes. I think
3 mana gain 3 life, draw a card is totally sweet, but doesn't ramp you. And 3 mana put a land into play, don't draw a card, gain life is also good, but it's just taking a card out of your hand.
Yeah.
So it feels like both of them slow down the progression. I think it's the whole idea of what you're talking about. The whole idea that the sundial thing could happen is such a busted idea that you would have access to this all on the back of what this one card is doing, right? It does too much. It's stapling that extra piece on the bottom to make it splashy because it's a Titan, and I think that's the issue. There has to be a drawback when something is good. It's what makes the puzzle of Magic fun. When there's no drawback to make something good, the game gets a lot less interesting.
I think it should have been blue green, draw a card, gain 3 life, never get to put a land in the play. Let it literally be the opposite of Kroxa, right? Like then this and Kroxa are inverses of each other or whatever. I mean, I guess like Kroxa lets you if they don't discard, they take 3 damage, right? That's how Kroxa works. They either take 3 damage and maybe that's the answer, right? 2 mana, gain 3 life, or draw a card. Or just get rid of the life gain, right? It's you get to draw a card or gain or put a land in the play. I think that's also cute. I think that's probably actually the answer, right? Like make it a little bit different than Kroxa.
Yeah, because the life gain aspect, that's when you're talking about the inevitability. Getting lands into play and drawing cards is really, really good, but it's getting lands into play, drawing cards, and making it kind of impossible for your opponent to find a way to kill you fast enough. That's what's so frustrating about it. I don't care if you draw a larger card or an extra land if I'm going to kill you on my turn. But if you're able to like
the sustain, it's not the inevitability that you have an issue with; it's the sustainability that you have an issue with.
Yes,
this card lets them sustain, which you, from a tempo perspective, which is where you live, you hate. My issue with is its inevitability, which from a control player and mid range player, I hate. So and then from an aggro and tempo and tempo and aggro decks can't beat this card, and control mid-range decks can't beat this card, which means you have to end up in combo, which a format where every single deck is playing Uro or is a combo deck is not a healthy format. And that is, I think that's a good final statement. Unless you have something else, and I could do shout-outs before we go.
All I was gonna say to you guys is, we're gonna be trying to bring you guys something like this more often. We wanted to try this out tonight because obviously we spent 5 years of our life talking about Modern for 2 hours every single week, and started to kind of explore other avenues with our Magic talk. And we missed Modern, and we wanted to talk about it. So what I would love for you guys to do, if you're watching this and listening to this, is leave us a comment. Hit the thumbs up on the video, but specifically leave us a comment and let us know, did you enjoy this? Do you want to see more of this? We want to bring you guys the content that you guys want to see. So let us know. Just all you got to do when this video is over, go down to the bottom, leave a comment. It would mean a lot to us.
Yeah, and I know obviously we pitch Patreon every time, but like we are trying to now upgrade again and do next level and this is kind of some of the stuff you'll be seeing more of, hopefully. So check out Patreon. It's hopefully the more money we get there, the more this type of effort is sustainable and that we can be consistent with it. So if you check that out, we are super helpful. We're also super thankful to all of our patrons right now. And then make sure to check out all the videos that we release here every week. I'm at Kess Wiley on everything. I'm Mr. Ben Bateman is at Ben blah 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 is at Ben Bateman Media on everything. We are the MMcast, and this is the Masters of Modern micro podcast that we're now releasing on YouTube. So thanks
Microcast.
So much.
Microcast.
Also might put it on Instagram because there's like TV Instagram.
Yes.
So maybe that'll live there too.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Yep, absolutely.